Well, boys and girls, thanks for joining me once again for what could turn out to be a marathon. I really don't know. This is little Petey's latest efforts. This is a little video which is entitled Bart K Judgment Day. So I presume it's got something to do with me in some way. So let's have a look at it, shall we? And we'll correct little Petey where little Petey makes his little Petey poops, mistakes, boo-boos, things like that. All right, little Petey. Let's hear all about how I'm wrong somehow, probably.
In the beginning, God said, Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree which has fruit. It shall be food for you. Genesis 1:29. Man.
Right, so you're going to start the premise of your argument around the needs physiologically for human beings in terms of their nutrition and stuff on a piece of canon, a piece of doctrine in a religious manuscript. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Was designed to eat plant foods.
Oh, so you just added that last bit there because I don't see that in the scripture at all, Peter. That's your opinion. And it's already been shown to be inane in the extreme. People that want to watch a discussion between myself and Peter that happened not long ago. You can watch that and, tune into the part where Peter says it's impossible that we could possibly conceivably be carnivores because, you see, we don't have sharp, pointy teeth like this. And other such intellectually flabbergasting statements. And we're starting well on this one already, aren't we, Petey? Have you got some science for us?
At the Sermon on the Mount.
No, still in the theology. Okay.
God said, amongst other things, according to the Gospel, Matthew 25:40, Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me.
Yes. Let's see what you think the relevance of that is, though.
Indicating that you shall be judged for those things. And today is Bart K Judgment Day.
Excellent. The rapture. I've been waiting. Good. Do I get a final speech? An acceptance speech? Or something? Or is it straight into the fiery pit? Let's hear. What's the judgment?
Looks like you got some splaining to do.
You got some splaining to do, Lucy.
Okay, for Judgment Day. Here's a close-up, by the way.
Here's an even closer up. Love you, Petey.
All right, so I could also call this video, is the paleo, keto, carnivore, low-carb diet a joke?
Well, why don't we stick to that topic? Or is you just trying to leverage my name so that you get some more exposure? Sure, I'll do that for you, Pete. That's no problem. I'll give you some more exposure. But what I'm going to do is expose you still further as the absolute charlatan and clown that you are. It's my pleasure. You're welcome.
And yes, it is. All right. We'll start out with Bart, though, because Bart was a guy who I had a conversation with about a week ago or so. And
you're still not over it, clearly, son. Sorry to have done such deep psychological wounds to you. But really, you did it to yourself, actually, son, if you watch the thing again. As many times as it takes for you to actually grasp the sheer magnitude of the fisting you got in a discussional sense, of course, in a very gentlemanly fashion.
And he doesn't allow much of a conversation, so...
I actually did allow you a lot of latitude and leeway, Peter, but I did warn you beforehand that if you spouted a fallacy on my channel, I would stop you immediately and correct it. And that's what I did, because I will not allow anyone to espouse fallacies on my YouTube channel. And when you started to go down the track of making a cause and effect inference, I'm going to stop you and ask you for cause and effect data. You will not be able to provide it because it does not exist. Ergo, your cause and effect statement fails and you lose the debate. We don't need to sit there for half an hour and listen to your ridiculous, facile, vacuous ideas around, well, anything, clearly, to understand that at that point, we are done, Peter, and it's you who's the charlatan because you've made a cause and effect claim that you cannot support. All right? I'm sorry about that. It remains factual, nonetheless, with my full sympathies.
Oh, I'm going to put the conversation here today.
Oh, so now you're going to put your side across so that we all have to sit here and listen to it. And then I can debunk it in exactly the way I debunked it at the time without allowing you to waste our time by going through the whole thing. I suppose that's quite clever.
And we're going to talk about what is known about the relationship of paleo, keto, carnivore, low-carb diet versus
What is known, you say? That's an interesting discussion. Good. Okay. So that's going to be your first failure straight away there, Peter, isn't it? You're going to talk about what you think is known, which shows us immediately that you do not understand science at all and have no actual place at the table for this discussion. And as such, when you go off rampantly off course on some childlike wild goose chase that will not have any impact on the unassailability of my scientific position, we're not going to sit here and listen to it without interrupting it and saying, no, this is not going to work, Peter, this direction you're going, and here is why. Just as valid. Right. Go on, though.
vegetarian vegan diets for general health, all-cause mortality, as well as for diabetes and cancer.
Uh-huh. We covered this a little bit in the discussion/debate that we had as well, Peter, and I showed you to be completely incompetent in any way, shape, or form to actually interpret the pseudoscience known as the epidemiological data set. I showed you up. Remember, I ran rings around you in a discussion about that very topic and took you to a place that you had no idea even existed, or how to even calculate any of this stuff on the fly quickly. And yet I'm the one who doesn't know much about this and is somehow being shown up in some way. This is hilarious. Let's go through it again, though, if we have to.
Okay, so first of all, the most useful thing I ever learned after, being a doctor for over 30
Was it vocal control, Peter? Was it modulation of your voice, you're about to say?
years is that if humans eat a primarily starch-based diet, a plant-based diet with mostly starch to satisfy their hunger, they end up being healthy. And
that's a sweeping generalization, and also health is a construct. Science is an empirical undertaking using variables as measured. Because there's also quite a population of people who do not eat a diet remotely like the one you've just described, who also seem to be pretty healthy. Ergo, nil poir, really, Peter.
that's more useful than anything I ever learned in pre-med, med school, residency, fellowship, and attending work. And the reason is because your gut is stretched. That's early satisfaction of hunger. Starch is basically a polymer of glucose wrapped in fiber from a plant food.
And not necessarily wrapped in fiber.
And starch is basically P for potato, SP, sweet potato, rice, beans, peas, lentils, garbanzos.
How does all of this extraneous 101 level basic introduction to material affect the veracity, correctness of anything I had to say in our discussion the other day, Peter, or the fact that you were given it no lube? Because I don't think any of this does affect that.
Quinoa, oatmeal, and they stretch your stomach, providing early satisfaction of hunger, and then it goes into your intestinal tract,
The other thing about the vegans with this brain fog, this need to repeat themselves in this way when they speak.
And the digestive enzymes have to separate the fiber from the glucose. And so the glucose is slowly absorbed into the blood. And here's...
In fact, the variability of blood glucose response to the exact same intake of various boluses or boli, both between individuals and within a given individual test to test, Peter, the variability is so vast that you can't actually make a statement about the speed at which glucose is going to be released. The statistical power of being able to do so doesn't exist, I'm afraid. The GI scale fails basic test of its own ability to be sensitive enough to changes in the signal. Sorry about that.
There's a curve of...
But hell, what do I know about nutrition science, statistics, statistical inference, designing research projects, researching them, writing them up, getting them published, teaching both undergraduate and postgraduate students up to thesis level, undertaking multi-million-dollar external consults with various organizations, that kind of thing. What do I know about any of that? Oh, yeah, quite a bit.
Of blood glucose level versus time, and the glucose level slowly rises.
That's a generalization based on a GI scale, which, as I've just described, is so vastly noisy as to render its signal of no utility.
And it stays normal for a prolonged amount of time. That is in comparison, if you eat just simple sugars with no fiber, the blood glucose kind of spikes, pancreas
Same argument.
Compensates, releasing a lot of insulin, and the sugar comes down relatively rapidly. That sometimes
Same argument.
Can cause symptoms. It can sometimes cause what is called rebound hypoglycemia. But the point of this is, starch is the best food in the world. It is what you should get the vast majority of your calories from. It is
well, that's your opinion again, Peter, and it's false. It's still ridiculous, vacuous, oblivious to the mere fact of your presentation as a member of the species Homo sapiens sapiens, at least somewhat. You are an obligate hypercarnivore by design, patently. Your opinion on the matter doesn't change any of those facts.
The best way to satisfy your hunger. And if you only know that, you could probably do pretty well.
So now we're supposed to get the vast majority of our so-called energy from the one macronutrient that humans are absolutely not designed to do well on. Right, good. So that shows us exactly where you're at, Peter, with your exact level of competence, which is none. You have singly failed to adopt, appropriate, understand, and incorporate into your knowledge base what is known about anthropology, chemical anthropology of human skeletons, physical anthropological evidence, other associated evidences such as paintings on caves, etc. It's a slam dunk as to what human beings absolutely have consumed for the vast majority of the last at least 350,000 years is how long humans have expected to have existed on the planet. And probably more like 2.5, 3 million before that in species very nearly human and not quite human yet, though. We know what they did eat. Ergo, we know through positive and negative selection pressure, fact, that therefore the human body will be molded and modeled so as to optimize its performance under those conditions of that diet. And that is what has occurred, Peter. Comparative anatomy points to it clearly, and it goes a bit better than we don't have sharp, pointy teeth. All right? Wow, Peter, you're just so utterly divorced from reality that it's comical. And your projection of pointing the finger of comicality at me, my word, son, do you own a mirror? Okay, I think you should go and have a good, long, hard look in your own eyes and have a word with yourself about some of this. Stunning stuff. You had 90 minutes to overcome my argument in the discussion we had a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago now, probably. You couldn't do it then. What makes you think that this slideshow is going to prove anything now? Because we're still waiting for you to say anything remotely sensible on any topic.
It's the most important thing anybody can know about health. All right, so here you are. This is you,
So, I mean, look at this. Look at this. Man, that is some fucking good sciencing there, Pete. You got me. Case closed. There it is, everybody. No more words needed. That's how it is, because Pete said so. Oh, shit. I hope you can do better than that. Can we flesh some of that out?
hopefully by middle age, a person gets their act together for health, but sooner, late is better than never. All right. The typical American's a disaster. They eat meat, processed food oils. They're fat and sick by the time they're in their 40s.
Yes. But which of those relationships that you've just outlined there are causal and which are associative? And if there's a mishmash, which there will be, what are the exact contributions of everything? Hint, that cannot be determined using multivariate regression. It doesn't have that capacity or power. Okay.
50s, they get put on a bunch of drugs, drug, then they go for surgery, chop, bye money, dead prematurely. Okay, to win the
well, I take my hat off to you, Pete. You're clearly the man in science, and I'm clearly just some buffoon that's a funny guy and a good actor. Absolutely. Wow.
Again, the longest lived people in the history of the world have been these plant-based populations.
No, Peter, like I stopped you at the time when you tried to say that on my channel. No, that is not so. None of the blue zones are identified plant-based diet zones, with the possible exception to some degree of the Seventh-day Adventists around Loma Linda. Further to that, a milieu of uncontrolled degrees of freedom confounds collinearities, covariates, as to render any relationship observed only possible of indicating that a relationship exists, but not what it is, and certainly not cause nor effect. So your point from here on about your blue zones is pointless. That's why you didn't get to spill all this crap on my channel. We all know the blue zone stories. My audience is educated. They've got this. We understand the blue zones are a fabrication of pseudoscience put together by a journalist, as it turns out, and not supported actually by any scientific evidence or inference that the claims being made are so. Right, what is next?
Is eating 95% or more typically plant foods, and usually
that's just a lie, Peter.
Then they don't need to take any pills. The Johnson keeps working for a long time. Okay, nowadays it's a little more complicated. There's a lot of toxins in the water.
Oh, Peter, pumpkin eater. Dear, oh dear. My Johnson has no performance anxiety of any kind. And I'm the best part of a decade into an almost entirely carnivorous existence.
In the food, so you got to be a little more careful about avoiding them. Okay, we're going to go
Oh, here we go. We don't have sharp, pointy teeth. Oh, yay. Yay. Here we go again.
through some basic common sense stuff, and then we're going to go through a whole
Basic common sense with Petey Pumpkin Eaty. All right, Petey the Pumpkin. Where you go?
bunch of scientific papers. So basically, look at your teeth. Look at your teeth in the mirror. They're flat.
We don't have sharp, pointy teeth. We actually do. Yeah. 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 And we covered this, remember? This is the thing with you vegans. You'll come online the very next day and spout the same mindless fuckwittery again. Like this has been water off a duck's back. We covered the teeth thing. There are no paintings on cave walls of ancient humans diving headlong at woolly mammoths with their mouths open in an attempt to rip their flesh open with their sharp, pointy teeth. We have thumbs. Ergo, we can fashion tools with sharp, pointy ends, conceived of by our brains, those of us, Peter, who have functioning brain cells. We have language by which we can communicate with one another and form a team and teamwork and such, as so as to take down quite large beasts like mammoths and stuff. No sharp, pointy teeth required. Secondly, once again, for those of you who are terminally unable to understand when your argument has failed, let's go through another point here. Remember our friend the hagfish, Peter, that we discussed, you and I? That's right. He, her, shim, shay, them, they live in the depths of the ocean, so they do, where they live entirely off the decaying carcasses of whales and such. Entirely carnivorous they are. They don't have any teeth of any kind, Peter, let alone any sharp, pointy ones. Whoops. Okay, so look at your teeth. They're not sharp and pointy like a lion. Ergo, you're not a carnivore. Absolutely fucking ridiculous, Peter. Okay? But what do I know about logic and science and stuff? My word.
Like a herbivore, like a horse in this picture here.
We used to be herbivorous humans about 4 or 5 million years ago. The selection pressure to cause a shape change in our dental structure hasn't existed. There's been no negative selection against our herbivorous-looking teeth. Again, with the sharp, pointy sticks and stuff.
Okay, look at our intestinal tract.
Yes. Look at it. Do you see a meaningful functional cecum there, Peter? Which would what would be required if we were truly herbivorous? No? Just the veriform appendix, the vestigial thing about the size of your small finger that doesn't function as a cecum whatever? Oh, okay. Tell us more about the digestive tract, though.
Like a 22-foot long intestinal tract that is typical of herbivore animals. Okay, the carnivore.
Yeah, we used to be a herbivore animal. Tell me what selection pressure would cause a shortening of our alimentary canal, Peter. Because if it's nice and long and is able to absorb the vast majority of actual nutrient that we take in with very little waste, wouldn't that be a good thing? And in fact, that is a good thing because, well, that's why we absorb basically all the meat and fat that we eat. And there's very little of anything left over. It's one of the reasons, because of our length of alimentary canal. Yeah, good. What's next?
Herbivores, they don't want the meat to putrefy. Like, putrefying meat, how disgusting that is. They got.
But that's why it's absorbed and it's broken down to a constituent and absorbed through the long alimentary canal that we have relative to some other animals. It's one of our advantages. We already had a long digestive tract because we were herbivores. That wasn't working well for us. That's why it needed to be so long. We started eating something that actually does work well for us, meat. Yum, yum, thought the early man. Me like. Let's have more of that. Oh, that's pretty good too. Now me don't no go poo-poo so much, which is a good thing. Constipation, though, no, that's almost entirely the domain of the herbivorous lifestyle, I think you'll find. Okay, what's next?
Short intestinal tracts. And they got big sharp.
Yeah, but again, there are a whole bunch of carnivores that exist that have much more convoluted alimentary tracts than the 3 carnivores you've picked on there. 2 cats and a canine. Because we all know that no other animals exist on the planet that have different morphological adaptations to environment. They fill different niches in the ecological construct. We're all specialists. The best lions there are lions, and they're designed for that. We're not designed to be lions. We're designed to be Homo sapiens sapiens, and we're the best designed for that. It seems to be quite well conduced, in fact. So all of this stuff, you're just giving us your opinion, Peter. And it's really, really infantile opinion. It's really, really ill-educated. It's really, really stunning that a physician could have so little appreciation and understanding of physiology.
Sharp teeth. Also, the other thing about their teeth is it only goes up and down, whereas we've got a jaw that goes, can go side to side.
We covered this in our discussion, Peter. Remember, I completely blew you out of the water on that one as well, and you just sat there and said, yeah, okay, that's a pretty good comeback. People that didn't see that discussion between myself and Peter the other day, they should go and watch it on my channel, and they'll see how I dealt with it then, so I'm not going to repeat myself now. But this is what I mean, Peter. You've been pulled to absolute pieces, and the very next day you get up, pretty much, dust yourself off and say the same stupid, inane, ignorant garbage again. It's incredible. By which I mean you have no credibility. You are done. You're finished. You are the laughingstock of anyone who actually understands logic, science, physiology, nutrition, or any of those related topics at all, in fact. And you probably can't even see that. You think you've done so well here by putting together this little slideshow where you're saying we don't have sharp, pointy teeth. No.
To grind plant food, I got the flat teeth. Okay, another thing too, just common sense. Imagine you are walking down a path in a forest and you see a dead deer, a carcass, there's flies buzzing around it. Do you instinctively feel you must get down on your knees and take a bite out of it?
No, because we've moved on from our very, very early, very likely early origins as human beings, as scavengers, taking what we could get, rotten or not. And we've become now a bit different in terms of our typical eating habits, in that we like to hunt, kill our own prey, and eat that as fresh as possible. Or if not, it to be frozen for long enough to get it to where we want it to be so that we can store it for a time frozen, then thaw it and eat it if we must. We're not so much into the eating of rotten meat anymore as a species. There are 1 or 2 fringe loons running around suggesting that we should do it, and it's great for some reason. I'm not with those folks, personally, but no, I wouldn't, probably. Maybe if I was out in the wilderness and lost somewhere and I had to eat something, maybe I would, but I'd have to make sure it was damn well cooked. And even then, I don't know I could stomach it if it was really off. That's just me. Others are different.
Our teeth can't even tear its flesh, okay?
Yeah, but again, remember the thumbs and the sharp pointy sticks, which we can also think about, what else can we do with these hands? Bang the rocks together. Oh, look, sharp shards of rock. Cutty cut. So I have never, Peter, sat down to my kitchen table at mealtime and had a plate of steak put in front of me by my lovely partner, having prepared said steak for me, only for me to say, I thought we'd discuss this. Remember, for I don't have the sharp pointy teeth to eat this steak. For she, in her infinite wisdom, has provided me with the very tools I need, fashioned by the thumbs using the brains. Look at that, a thing with some pointy things on it to hold it there, and a thing with a serrated edge to cut through it. Fuck, that's amazing. Seems I don't need these. Fucking idiot.
We're not made to eat that. It's disgusting. You go to
Agreed, I don't want to eat rotten meat.
the store, to buy meat, ground meat. It's disgusting.
No, it isn't. That's your opinion. It's quite appetizing, in fact.
What makes it taste good is you fry it, you put ketchup and mustard and all these other things on there, lettuce, tomatoes, pickles, and a bunch.
I don't put those things on the mince, the ground beef. We call it mince in this part of the world. Mince. M-I-N-C-E. Which sounds like I'm saying months to you guys. Because you don't get my accent. Which you'll think I just said accent. Anyway, that's for another day. I don't want to eat rotten meat or raw meat either, Peter. Luckily, we evolved tools to hunt so we can have fresh and fire to cook it with. Some time ago. It's believed that humans or humanoids had control of fire 1 million years ago, nearly. It seems. So.
And all that. We don't want to take a bite out of that.
No, I don't. You're quite right. But that doesn't mean I'm not a carnivore.
On the other hand, if you see fruits and vegetables, all these right here, they're lovely. I think the reason we have color vision is so we can see when a fruit is ripe.
But again, that's your opinion. And that may have been part of why color vision evolved originally when we were primates or of that nature, living largely in trees, looking for fruits and berries and whatever else. But we maintained that because there's no evolutionary pressure for us to lose it. Why would there be? It's quite handy to be able to see colours. So hot, Peter.
On the table, we want that. We are attracted to that.
Well, I'm not. Personally. There is probably a built-in attraction to fruits from the 5 million years ago part of the brain. Maybe. Certainly we know that carbohydrate is addictive in a large way. Certainly we know that carbohydrate is not necessary in the human diet anymore. Well, it never was in the human diet. It was only ever part of our very, very early 5 million years ago ancestors. In the vast majority of at least the last 350,000 years, there hasn't been carbohydrate, fruit, that kind of stuff around in enough abundance to be a problem. And then when we did get it going, from that point on, it all becomes pretty much a human invention because none of those fruits there are in their natural format. None of them. They're all selectively bred for. They're all human inventions. They're all little packets of sugar with some fibre and 1 or 2 micronutrients. And they are a human invention.
About the only thing more attractive than that is a bowl of fruit, carried by a woman, okay? But that's about as good as it gets.
Bigot.
Okay, now.
A manly delivered bowl of fruit might be just as attractive for its fruitiness. How dare you? I'd pick the woman myself to deliver my fruit as well, but that's not the point.
A couple things about the vegan diet. It is well known. This is not some mystery. It is well known that it is much, much, much more healthier than a meat-based diet.
No, that is not known at all. There are no comparative studies that have been conducted or reported on anywhere in the literature on this planet or elsewhere that we're aware of. That is just your opinion again, and it's false. Completely false. It's rubbish, Peter. But I presume you're going to attempt to provide us with some evidence that what you're saying is supportable with evidence, aren't you?
It's not even close. Okay, I haven't ever seen a study where the meat diet is better than the plant-based diet.
There hasn't been any such study, Peter. No such studies exist. You don't even know what's in the literature. If you want to contend that a plant-based diet is apparently associated with better health outcomes short-term than is a mixed diet, then that's likely to be supportable, at least with some kind of inference. What you cannot assert is any long-term effect beyond the length of time any of these people in these prospective studies have actually been controlled for. So there's no ability to project it out to a long-term thing. So healthy as a throw-out statement means long-term. You can't support that. Sorry. Scientists are disciplined about how they communicate about what is establishable with empirical evidence and what isn't. Many of the concepts we're talking about here are actually metaphysical. They are beyond science. Science can't inform on constructs. It can only inform on relationships between selected variables, for example. Okay? What's next?
Okay, and I've seen many, thousands. All right.
No, you haven't. There are no studies comparing meat diets, carnivore diets, with vegan diets. None. On any aspect of anything. You can't have seen thousands. None exist. Okay? One of us has actually been involved in the sciences for several decades, Peter, and one of us is you. All right?
Beyond meatless, the health effects of vegan diets.
The health effects. Effect is the conjugate of cause. Do you have cause and effect data here? No. Vegetarians, those who avoid meat, and vegans, additionally, avoiding dairy and eggs, represent 5% and 2%, respectively, of the US population. The aim of this review is to assess the effects of vegetarian diets, particularly strict vegetarian diets, i.e. vegans, on health and disease outcomes. We summarized available evidence from 3 prospective cohorts of Adventists. Are we done? Because that's not cause and effect data. We are done, Peter. Sorry about that. The disciplines of science don't allow us to make a cause and effect claim on the basis of this study because it's unable to provide one. Okay?
Adventist cohort. So the healthiest of the Seventh-day Adventists, they're from like Loma Linda in particular, Los Angeles suburb, and it's part of their religion, Seventh-day Adventists, to eat primarily a plant-based diet. And some of them are 100% vegan. Many of them are, subsets of vegetarianism. They could be lacto, ovo, eggs and milk. Some are pest.
Yeah, so this data probably likely, Peter, comes from the Adventist Health Study number 2. And one of the significant issues with that data set is when you look at the raw data as collected, the observations actually observed by those authors at that time on that cohort of individuals, what you will find is that the incidence of all-cause mortality and cancer mortality and cardiovascular mortality and all the major causes of mortality individually passed out, every single one of them followed the same trend across their 5 cohorts, Peter. The 5 cohorts being the vegans, the so-called comparator, the first quartile of meat consumption, the second, third, and then fourth quartiles of meat consumption. Those were your 5 groups of individuals. The death rates for everything combined and all things separately passed out were highest in the vegans and lowest in the people who ate the most meat for every single one of those disease processes. That's what the raw data showed. Incidents per person per year of follow-up. What did the Adventist authors do? They adjusted their data set to show the inverse relationship. It's fabrication. It's criminal. It's scientific malpractice personified. It's indicative of what's wrong with the entire scientific fraternity and the way it's conducted these days, Peter. Go and look at the raw data. Right, what's next?
Pesco, vegetarians, okay, but the more close they are to vegan, the healthier they are.
Notice I'm just pointing to the actual correct relationship, and I'm not making a cause and effect inference from that. You are pointing to an inference that has been artificially turned 180 degrees on its ass, a lie, and you are claiming that somehow supports your claim of causality, Peter.
The longer they live and the less disease they have.
Except that both of those statements are demonstrably false. I've just demonstrated it. They are fabrications, Peter.
Okay.
No, it's not okay. They lied. Those authors lied. They fabricated their data set, their outcomes, to suit their theology. They told an absolute lie about what their data showed. And it got published. Incredible, isn't it?
Now, here's another study, and this was done by a group out of Harvard, the Harvard School of Public Health. Here, I'm going to see if I can hide my little thing here.
Peter, we can tell. All right, there's no hiding it from us.
And basically what they found, and this is, Walter Willett, Frankie Willett.
Yes, the well-known epidemiologist, ergo a bloke with no scientific credibility whatsoever, because health epidemiology is a joke. Yeah, who else?
All these guys. What is the effect of different specific dietary fats? Now,
again, with effects. See, that's the conjugate of cause, Peter. Where's the cause and effect data? These are associative data sets that have been adjusted, fabricated. Still, remember? We talked about this in our discussion when I destroyed you the other day. And here you are a few days later spouting the same ridiculous fucking nonsense again. Wow! Are you that recalcitrant? And if so, why is that? Did somebody hurt you at some stage, Peter? I don't know. Shall we carry on?
First one is the blue. This is trans fats. Trans fats are a disaster. That's a processed food. It's quite bad. Similar to saturated fat. But the next is...
Okay, what is the metric here on the y-axis here, Peter? Change in total mortality. From what? What is the comparator? What is the baseline incidence? And this is a change in percent. So this is going to be a relative statistic. What is the absolute actual change in observable mortality? And what you'll find is that the outcome statistic there will be so close to zero as makes no odds. For all of those 4 lines that are on that chart that you're just about to waffle on about. Not one of them convincingly shows us anything. And again, we discussed this the other day, Peter. Remember? Clearly not. You've probably tried to wipe the whole experience from your mind. In your shoes, I might have done the same thing. I'd probably go and see a hypnotist. These are not the droids you're looking for.
Saturated fat. Quite worse. It causes an increase.
There you go. See, causes. Causes. No, this is an associative data set, Peter. It cannot inform on cause nor effect. It can tell us what is associated with what under no control of any kind. That's all it can do. Sorry.
In mortality. What that means is the more sat fat you eat, the sooner you die.
No, it doesn't mean that at all. And in fact, there is no evidence remotely to support that claim meaningfully at all in a human being over an entire 100-year lifespan, in fact. So, just a completely false, propaganda-based bit of misinformation from a complete charlatan, a very, very arrogant individual believing himself to be remotely competent in a field that he's got no training in whatsoever, and who doesn't even have the self-awareness to know when he's been spanked beyond all recognition and should probably retire permanently from showing his face on YouTube. It's just stunning, isn't it, kids? We've dealt with this. What was the baseline death rate, Peter? Probably 8 per 10,000 person years of follow-up. Okay? There's nothing to see here.
Okay, and what's the point of that? Saturated fat is like saying animal fat. The vast majority...
No, it isn't. Not at all. Animal fat contains saturates, absolutely, but it also contains both mono and polyunsaturates as well. And what seems to be the right ratio for humans so that they don't become inflamed by it. Funny that. It's almost as if we've been eating that way for 4.5 million fucking years, Peter. Oh, yeah.
Majority of saturated fat comes from typically animal foods in the diet, like dairy, for example, and eating meat. So that's a
one of the most saturated fats in existence is coconut fat, Peter, and that's not an animal, is it?
Valuable thing to know. More saturated fat you eat, the worse. The sooner you're likely to
No, that's just simply not true, Peter. That's just mythology.
Die. Then you got the MUFA, monounsaturated fat, which is classically, olive oil. And then
Now, olive oil is 14 to 16% polyunsaturated as well, Peter. Okay, so please.
Saturated fat, PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids. In my opinion, all the fats are bad, but...
Oh, there we go. There's where it is, Peter's opinion. All fats are bad, okay? The very thing that we've been gaining our energy from for 4.5 million fucking years is bad. Universally, all of it. Shit. Really? Wow. What do I know? Nothing, clearly. I don't know anything about any of this, says Peter. I'm just a funny guy.
Saturated fat is worse than the other ones. That is worth knowing.
Well, it would be worth knowing if what you just said was correct and truthful and had some kind of veracity. Unfortunately, Peter, it doesn't. Still.
Because, how can you eat meat?
Like this. Gulp. Yum, yum, yum. Where's my next bite? Right.
All right, it's going to go on and on. Now, here's more.
Yeah, I think we know who's going to go on and on here, Peter.
Studies here. Association of animal and plant protein intake with all-cause mortality.
Right, so an associative study which is completely unable to inform us in any way whatsoever on cause or effect. A completely uncontrolled, naturalistic observation, at least that's what it would be, were this paper published without adjustment. Remember adjustment? So this is another fabrication. This is more pseudoscience. And its outcome statistics are piss weak at best once again, Peter. Remember we discussed these issues already.
Basically, the higher the animal protein intake, it was positively associated with increased cardiovascular mortality.
Well, not powerfully, actually, strongly or convincingly at all. Once again, it's, when you're competent to actually interpret these statistics, Peter, you'll agree with me. Until then, you're just going on theology that you've been told by somebody else. But please stop it, because you're just wrong. It's just makes you look stupid, so cut it out, basically. And secondly, you're still making a cause and effect inference here. Even if there was a good association, which there isn't, so what? I'll tell you what else is associated with what else. Sunburn and ice cream sales at the beach on any given day. Powerfully correlated, all right? You're not doing yourself any favours at all, Peter, by trying to continue this nonsense. You've been dealt with, you've been shown up, your level of incompetence is clear. We all know what a buffoon and idiot you are. You need to just withdraw now. Because none of this nonsense is going to change anybody's mind about anything unless that person has even fewer brain cells than you have. And, mate, that is saying something. Okay? What's next?
Plant protein, on the other hand, was inversely associated with, all-cause mortality.
Yeah, healthy user bias. We're done.
And cardiovascular mortality. So remember that the more animal protein you eat, the worse off you are. More like
No, me. You just made a statement directed at me, Peter, and to all your viewers individually, all of them. You just made a statement and said your risk, your odds of anything, you will do worse if you eat more meat, is what you just said. No, Peter. False. Completely false. I do vastly better eating meat. Vastly. So do most people that eat meat. They'll report the same thing. Almost invariably, it seems. Unlike how vegans will report after some time on a vegan diet. Remember, 84% quit rate within 5 years and 90% of those people citing catastrophic health failure born of nutrition deficiency as the result of their little experiment with their anti-humanist, non-human diet. Okay? What's next?
likely you are to die.
No, false. None of these statements can make any statement about the likelihood of anybody dying at any time. They don't have that power. That's not what they're designed to do. They cannot inform on that at all, still.
Okay, or have cardiac problems. Okay, the plant protein is associated with being protective because of the plant.
No, not protective, because that's a cause and effect statement. It's an association, and it's healthy user bias that's driving that, almost certainly. We're done with that, still.
It's not the protein itself. Okay, low-carb diets increase in all-cause mortality. A low-carbohydrate diet based on animal sources was associated with higher all-cause mortality.
How much higher, Peter? What were the outcome statistics, the absolute statistics as observed? You don't know? Of course you don't know, because you've never even gone to that paper and looked at it for yourself to see whether or not that data set can actually remotely support the claim being made. The paper will be claiming a statistically significant relationship based on a very, very large sample size, which has absolutely no applicability to clinical utility of any kind in any universe. It'll be a tiny little result, much like the ones we've already been talking about. There is nothing to see here. Still. Goodness gracious.
And men and women. Vegetable was associated with lower all-cause and cardiovascular disease
Healthy user bias.
mortality rates. Okay, and these are big studies. These populations.
Yes, big again. Remember, Peter, we talked about big versus good. A big pile of shit is still a pile of shit, isn't it, Peter? To be good, it needs to be a big pile of good data, and this isn't that. This is a big pile of shit. Okay? Still. Goodness gracious, it's almost as if you weren't present for the discussion that we had already, where we've dealt with your nonsense in regard of some of these ridiculous statements you're making.
Here, they're talking about, the sample set of females over 85,000, men over 45,000. Okay.
So fucking what?
Over 44,000. So these are big numbers.
So what were the size of the absolute outcome statistics, Peter? Oh, that's right. You don't even know. Neither would you probably be able to extract them if you tried, because you're not competent to read science. Okay?
Here's another one in Swedish women. Low carbohydrate diet, which means a high protein diet.
Not necessarily.
Big study sample set.
This one is, because that's what they're claiming. Well, we would have to read the study to see if that's the kind of diet they really did impose. And what was the control or referent?
43,000 patients.
Oh, no controls, because this is a prospective cohort study again, which is therefore associative, probably and almost certainly adjusted, ergo fabricated, and of no value, other than as hypothesis-generating material. That's its place. Okay? What's next?
Low-carb diets, high-protein diets were associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease.
Yeah, and drownings in swimming pools are highly, highly associated with the release of movies starring Nicolas Cage. Does that mean we need to ban Nicolas Cage from starring in any further movies? I think we should, but that's got nothing to do with drownings in swimming pools, personally. Sorry, Julian. What's next, Peter?
Okay. Animal protein induces an anabolic effect that raises blood lipids, like including blood cholesterol.
Yeah, as it should. That's the design. Yes, so?
And it activates mTOR, and it increases.
Yes, as it should. So?
The risk of disease.
There you go with the word risk again. None of those things you've just outlined occurring would even remotely logically lead anybody to the conclusion that would increase their risk of anything. Do you have any cause and effect data to support any of the claims you've just made? No, Peter, you don't, because it does not fucking exist. Still.
Atherosclerotic disease, for example. Okay.
Well, hang on. We talked about atherosclerosis as well during our discussion the other day. Remember, Peter? And you had no idea about that either. Incredible for a physician. There you go.
Hey, here's another study. Low carbohydrate diets and all-cause mortality. This one was like on the ballpark of like a 30% increase in all-cause mortality.
On what baseline? 8 per 10,000? So that's 24 per 100,000 person years of follow-up as an absolute change, Peter, isn't it? Remember we discussed that the other day as well. And you're still spouting these ridiculous relative, highly, therefore, inflated statistics as if, yeah, it's incredible. It's just incredible how these criminal charlatans do their thing. I hope 1 million people watch this video from start to finish and learn how to pick these charlatans out. Because you're still showing me prospective cohort studies that have exactly no ability to inform on cause and effect, and you're making cause and effect claims. This causes that. Sorry, doesn't hold any water still.
Low carbohydrate diets are associated with significantly higher risk of all-cause mortality.
Statistically, sure. But meaningfully, to any one given human being over a 100-year lifespan, no, not at all. Not a jot.
This is what I mean. I'm saying it's idiotic.
What's idiotic, Peter, is you making out like you have any competence whatsoever to discuss the statistical inferences being made here, because it's absolutely clear and patent that you do not. Okay?
Think that these diets are good for your health. The only studies I'm aware of for all-cause mortality show that these diets increase all-cause mortality.
Now, there you go again. Increase. That's a cause and effect statement, Peter. It cannot be supported, and you have not supported it. You've provided us with a bunch of pseudoscientific crackpottery without the semblance of control, being presented as if it's able to inform us in some way on cause and effect. That's just simply ridiculous. We are done with all of that stuff. Do you have any science to present to us?
Low carbohydrate diet from plant or animal sources. A low carbohydrate diet from animal sources is worse, higher all-cause, and...
Worse in what way, Peter? Worse for what?
Cardiovascular mortality.
No, not so at all. Same argument. Absolutely the same argument. No.
I also think, high-fat plant diets are bad compared to low-fat vegan diets, but I'm making the point here that, and this, believe me, is not a biased audience. Some of these guys out at Harvard, the Harvard School of Public Health, they promote a Mediterranean diet, which is an idiotic diet as well.
No, you're an idiot, Peter. You've got absolutely no idea about the human diet, what it should be, clearly. You have no seat at the table at this discussion. You have no competence, no credibility. Nobody takes you seriously. And rightly so, because you are a buffoon.
Okay, just so you know. But the more animal, paleo, keto, carnivore, high fat you go, the worse it gets.
So another prospective cohort study with a piss weak outcome statistic at best, showing absolutely no practical differences between any human beings living, present, past, future, and their likelihood of anything, because it can't inform on that anyway. Good. What's next?
In general. Okay, there's more to it than that, but that's a general thing. Okay, low carbohydrate diets, low fat diets. Okay, so what does this one says? Higher mortality was observed for overall low carbohydrate diet. And
He's just scanning through documents and reading words, Peter, looking for words you like to see. You have no capacity, clearly, to engage with the actual statistics being presented in these papers remotely at all. It's absolutely clear. The fact that you would give us a litany of prospective cohort study after prospective cohort study after prospective cohort study as some kind of evidence of cause and effect shows what a lunatic you are. You're barking at the moon here, son, because prospective cohort studies do not have that power. We are done. Still.
especially for unhealthy low carbohydrate diet. All right. And then it's the benefit is coming from the low fat diet. Okay, here's another one. By the way, Nathan Pritikin has said the two main categories are diet.
Nathan Pritikin. Okay, so there's another nick, wound in your, in whatever facade of credibility you might have had. Even the people you name drop are imbeciles, Peter. It's no wonder that you gravitate to such imbeciles, being one yourself, I suppose. Carry on, though.
Diet are high-fat diets and low-fat diets. Okay, protein doesn't tend to vary as much, but high-protein diets are also bad.
Okay. Dear, oh dear. What a fuckwit.
End up with high blood lipids, a similar effect. Cardiovascular disease, mortality, and cancer in vegetarians. Vegetarians have significantly lower ischemic heart.
Okay, what were the outcome statistics, Peter? Let's talk about those so that we can gauge the veracity of whatever relationship this paper is reporting on, as piss weak as it is. Because I can scan that within a few seconds and see how piss weak it is. You clearly can't do that. You can just scan for words that you want to see. You think when an author writes this is statistically such and such, that means it's some kind of inviolate canon in fact. No, it just means it's met the statistical threshold for being a relationship. As weak as that relationship might be, that hasn't happened purely due to dumb chance. It's a parsimonious description, I get that, but don't worry about it.
Disease. That means coronary artery disease or atherosclerosis of the heart, less heart attacks, okay? And they also have significantly low...
Okay, what were the absolute outcome statistics, Peter? To convince us that what you're saying has any merit. Because I do know the statistics and I can tell you there is no merit here in terms of outcomes per person per 100-year lifespan. We're talking about tiny, tiny differences which are statistically significant because of very large sample sets, not because there's a clinical, meaningful, different outcome for these groups of people. There isn't, still. Fuck me, is this hard to understand?
Or cancer.
Clearly too hard for Peter.
I mean, why wouldn't you want that? 30% reduction in...
From what? To what? At what cost? Because no, Peter, I wouldn't. Based on the statistics presented in any of these papers. Nothing in any of these papers would convince me to change my diet from 100% carnivore in any way. And I'm not saying I am 100% carnivore. I'm about 95. It's the concept I'm getting at here. None of this data convinces me, an actual scientist who understands statistics, inference, design, the logic of science, very well, thanks. No, Peter, none of this convinces me of shit.
And heart disease in this study, as well as 18% reduction in cancer. And the point is, this isn't even making it low fat, low sodium, no oils. You do all that, and it's much lower. It's dramatically lower. Dramatic improvements.
Dramatic is not a scientific word, Peter. It's a value judgment statement. Can you give us some statistics if you want to make claims and cite those claims for us, perhaps? No?
Help by going low fat, low sodium vegan with no oils, like the Esselstyn diet. Okay, position of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Vegetarian.
So a position statement, which is self-disclaiming, is an opinion then, isn't it? Is this based on any science at all? No. So what is this going to convince us of in any way, shape, or form?
And vegans are at reduced risk of...
No, they're not. There are no studies that inform on risk. None at all. Still, in any population, no. Risk is a cause and effect statement. So it's a false position statement based on ignorance of what the statistics can inform us on at all. Good. Can we move on?
certain health conditions, including ischemic heart disease, that means heart attacks, atherosclerotic heart disease, type 2 diabetes, the type that adults typically get, hypertension, and certain types of cancer and obesity.
Except that it has no ability at all to comment on any of those things. Nobody's risk of nothing can be provided for in the data set. It does not exist.
Basically, almost everybody dies from something related to this type of stuff here. Diabetes, hypertension, obesity.
Yeah, but the cause for that is the standard Western, standard American diet. Largely, it seems.
Atherosclerotic-related ischemia. Okay.
That's my opinion. I'm disclaiming it. That's my opinion.
Or cancer. I mean, that's what people die from in Western countries by far.
Yes, we know that, Peter, but that's got nothing to do with this false position statement, which is propaganda and based on ignorance, because it's talking about risk, and there are no studies that inform on risk still.
Most common. And that's what also they get not stuck on meds. And, you know, I hope you realize I'm not trying to demonize Bart K. I'm not trying to...
Well, you had an opportunity to have a reasonable discussion with me. I asked you to come for a cerebral discussion, and instead you gave me, we can't be a carnivore because we don't have sharp, pointy teeth, Peter. Where did you expect me to go? Because from that point on, you're a fucking joke, son. If you weren't already a joke from the ridiculous, nonsensical, pustulous bullshit that you'd spouted before that. You are ridiculous, Peter. Everything you say is ridiculous. Your entire persona is ridiculous. You have no credibility. You're done here. Wake up.
Demonize saturated fat or paleo, keto, or carnivore diets. Okay, so here is the gentleman, Bart K., that I had my pseudo conversation with.
It wasn't a pseudo conversation. It was 90 minutes long. It was a real conversation, Peter. You had an opportunity to provide anything reasonable or sensible. You failed to do so, and when you were cut off when you tried to fallaciously spout lies on my channel about what is known or what causes what, when there is no data to underpin your claim, extant anywhere on the planet, in fact. You got handled pillar to post, you got punched bloody in the metaphorical sense, you came to a sword fight with a limp broccoli stick. You got shown up, you got handled. And you can't deal with it, clearly. It's sad.
And a couple points I would make, like I've sort of alluded to here, plant foods give you the good stuff.
No, they don't. False. That's an opinion.
You know, most Americans are low in fiber. Plants...
There is no such thing as low in fiber. The exact dietary requirement for fiber in human beings is not 1 single gram ever, in fact.
Are where fiber comes from. The cell wall of every plant cell contains fiber. Plant cells are high in potassium, which is a vasodilator, opens up artery. P for plants, P for potassium. Magnesium is located in the center of cholesterol.
The fully 100% carnivorous diet provides all the nutrients required by a human being on a daily basis to that human being on a daily basis. There are no deficiencies that a human being can expect to experience on a fully 100% carnivorous diet, as evidenced by the fact that there are now hundreds of thousands and probably millions, it seems, of human beings living exactly that nutritional lifestyle, some of them, a good number of them, for a number of decades on end. Okay, we're done with that. Nothing that you require in your diet is not available to you in a diet which is devoid of plant material. None.
Sorry, in the center of chlorophyll, the plant molecule, so you eat your plants and that's what you get. Nitrates are the precursors, especially found, let's say, in greens, for example. You know.
And you can't get nitrates from meat, can you not, Peter? Goodness gracious, your ridiculous nonsense is unbelievable. your childlike pseudological construction, you are completely out of your depth in this field. You are out of your lane so badly it's laughable.
Arugula and all the other salads still have some. And those are made into systemic nitric oxide to dilate your arteries.
And you don't get nitric oxide precursors from eating meat, do you not? Fuck's sake.
Feel good from going in the sun. You get that systemic vasodilation. You got precursors in
When was the last time you saw any sun, Peter?
nitric oxide, right in your skin, subcutaneous areas. Okay, plants got a lot more antioxidants. Animals don't.
We don't need them. We're designed to get most of our antioxidant effect from being grounded to the earth, from our natural suite, our master suite of controlling antioxidant molecules, most of them protein-based and synthesized under the instruction of our genes, and indeed a reasonable level of a water-based antioxidant such as urate, which you might expect in a person eating almost nothing but muscle meat and animal fat. It's almost as if we've been doing that, Peter, for 4.5 million fucking years still.
The animals already used them up. Okay, glucose, meaning that it comes as a carbohydrate, especially in the form of starch, is best. All right.
No, it's not best, Peter. You require no exogenous carbohydrate in your diet, not 1 single gram ever. None. Still.
All right, low-fat vegan, other things. So you get the fiber, which lowers
You don't need any fiber, still.
the risk of colon cancer.
No, again, with the risk statements, there are no evidences to support your risk statement there. None. At all. False. Lie.
Lowers your risk of leaky gut,
No, same argument. No.
autoimmune diseases.
No, same argument. Lies. 1, 2, 3. Bang, bang, bang. Strike 3, Peter, you're out of here. False.
Also encourages the excretion by defecation of excess estrogen levels, so it lowers your estrogen levels.
Does it, Peter? Really? Uh-huh. Tell me all about that. I'm going to wait for my people to stop laughing. Okay, can we move on? Good.
lowers blood cholesterol.
Well, that's contraindicated, if anything, it seems.
It lowers atherosclerosis risk.
No, it doesn't. There are no studies that inform us on risk of any kind of any outcome whatsoever in human beings as that relates to any aspect of diet whatsoever. No, Peter.
It decreases the risk of impotence.
No. Same argument.
You know, no guy wants to be impotent.
No, Peter. But if we asked any reasonable audience to have a side-by-side look at yourself and myself and guess which one of us is most likely to be impotent if either one of us is, I wonder what they'd say.
Low-fat vegan.
I'm not, by the way, remotely impotent. Jesus. If anything, it gets worse as I age.
Vegan diet helps prevent impotence. It lowers your
No, it can't.
blood pressure, which also is protective against heart disease, atherosclerosis, and dementia.
Yeah, but there are many ways you can lower your blood pressure. And with comparison to what, Peter? The standard diet? We all know the standard diet is the worst possible diet a human being can consume. That is not a comparison with a meat-based diet, because the standard diet is not meat-based. It's a mixed diet.
Lowers insulin resistance. Thus,
Insulin resistance is a construct. And it's not a pathology, and it doesn't need lowering. The level of so-called insulin resistance that a person is expressing at any given time is under the control, largely, of a system of workings in the metabolic pathway called the Randall cycle, which Peter didn't understand a week ago and still doesn't, clearly. The level of so-called insulin resistance being exerted at any given time is absolutely appropriate and is according to the plans of the body to maintain its homeostasis and not allow damage to the tissues to occur. For goodness sake.
lowers your risk of type 2 diabetes.
No. Risk, no. Still.
The amino acid composition in plants is different than in animal foods.
Yes.
There's less leucine, which tends to be the rate-limiting step for activation of mTOR.
So what?
Which is a nutrient-sensing pathway telling cells to replicate. You don't want increased rates of cell replication with...
At times you do. And mTOR is activated when it's appropriate for it to be activated. That's why it exists in your cells. That's why the DNA encoding for it has survived for something like 13,000 million years. For fuck's sake. Wow.
with cancer. So
No. There you go again. No. Absolutely not. No evidence exists to support that ridiculous claim. None. Still.
what I'm saying is this is one other way that the animal protein increases the risk of cancer.
No, wrong. There is no evidence to support that claim whatsoever. None at all.
Okay, Bart says, go by the science. Well, the science supports a plant-based diet.
No, it doesn't, Peter. The science, the propaganda ring-fenced area that you're talking about, which purports to be science and isn't, making theological position statements about aspects of human nutrition, absolutely, even that does not support what you've just said. So, wrong, again, sunshine.
It's obvious. It's overwhelming. I'm going to show you a bunch of
I'll
papers.
tell you what's overwhelming, Peter. Your stupidity, your arrogance, your intractability, your irritating nature. But mostly it's your stupidity. Your pure, unadulterated stupidity. What's next?
Papers real quick here, but it's overwhelming. It's not like it's a close thing. It's not like it's, 5-4. It's more like 100-0.
Again, with opinions based on nothing. Absolutely fucking nothing, let alone any understanding of actual science.
Okay. Now here's some things that Bart K says. Just want you to know what this guy says. He says diabetes is due to elevated blood glucose, but
that's what it is. That's how it's diagnosed. That's what the pathology is. It's also the symptom. But something being the symptom doesn't preclude it from being the disease itself, because that's what diabetes is. How do we test whether someone is diabetic? We test their blood glucose, don't we? Yes. What do we treat? We treat the elevated blood glucose, because that's the pathology. That's the factor that will do damage to the body should the condition not be dealt with. What was the cause of the condition, the elevated blood glucose? Pouring carbohydrates down your stupid fucking neck. That's what the cause of it was. Cells that are replete with energetic substrate in the form of carbohydrate or fat or a mixture of both that require no more input will lock the door from the inside to protect themselves from damage. They do not require any glucose or anything else. That is a natural part of the operating of the human system. That is what you're going to refer to as insulin resistance. That's what you're going to refer to as being some kind of pathology. And the underpinning cause of what the actual disease is, which, Peter, remains elevated blood glucose still. Wow, this man is stupid.
But that's actually not correct.
Yes, it is correct. It is the disease. It is the diagnosis of the disease. It is the symptom of the disease. It is the thing that's treated. It is the problem. Elevated blood glucose, nothing else.
Elevated blood glucose is a symptom of insulin resistance.
Yes, and still it's the disease, and still it's the thing that's ameliorated. It's the thing that's treated. Still it's the thing that's a damaging, problematic thing to the body. It is diabetes. Diabetes is elevated blood glucose.
Okay, and insulin resistance is primarily caused by excessive dietary fat.
No, it isn't, Peter. That's absolute nonsense. That's half information based on absolutely no understanding of the Randall cycle whatsoever, nor of cellular energetics or the homeostatic processes of the human organism as a whole. It's just rubbish, Peter. It's absolute fucking nonsense. Ridiculous fucking nonsense. What's next?
Especially saturated fat. Okay. Bart K says the best diet is 100% animal foods with zero carbohydrate.
That seems to be the thing for which the best argument, based on the actual hard sciences that exist out there in the marketplace, would seem to indicate, those being the physical anthropology, the chemical anthropology, the comparative anatomy and physiology, the comparative genetics. They all point in the same direction. They all are in agreement. They all tell us exactly what our diet has been, ergo what we will be best adapted to. That's our niche. That's what we are. We're obligate hypercarnivores. Ideally 100% carnivore, But an obligate hypercarnivore starts at around the 70% level, actually. Human beings have a range at which they individually feel best. I think 100 is the optimal, all things being equal, for the average person, which I understand doesn't actually exist. But for what I'm saying is the 100% diet is best for most people. That's what I'm saying. So it seems. Those are the anecdotes we have to hand from the official Bureau and Board of Anecdotal Evidences. You've got nothing better than anecdotes because you don't have any science there. You've got pseudoscience dressed up to look like science, Peter. And unfortunately, what you don't have is enough scientific nous and credence of your own to be able to see through this fallacious, reductionist, ridiculous, fabricated pile of horseshit that you think is data. It's incredible.
I've even seen him say carbohydrates are a poison.
Okay. Correct. The dose being the most important aspect of whether it's a poison or not. The dose always makes the poison. You can have too much oxygen. You can have too much water. Both of those can be poisonous. The same is true of carbohydrates, yes.
Okay, that's the opposite of the truth.
No, it isn't, Peter. I've just outlined the truth to you, the unassailable truth to you, the facts as we understand them based on objective reality, Peter, and it's you that's divorced from the objective reality, unfortunately, not me.
The best diet for human health, based on tons and tons of study and
based on absolutely nothing but your theology and your desperate desire to accept that ridiculous theological pseudoscientific claptrap as if it's evidence for something when it isn't. We've covered this very well.
Epidemiological evidence as well.
You see, you just used the word epidemiology and evidence in the same sentence, Peter. And as regards cause and effect, risk and expectation, I'm afraid that fails because those kind of studies cannot inform on that stuff still.
Is a low-fat, low-sodium vegan diet.
No, it isn't, Peter. That's your opinion.
And in the modern world, preferably 100% vegan because we have to...
No, Peter, that's your opinion as well. And it's also fucking ignorant.
Detoxify from our previous experience with the SAD diet. All the naturally occurring populations do eat some animal products. They're all like...
All populations are naturally occurring, Peter. We're all here on this planet as part of nature. You buffoon.
Healthiest ones tend to be in the ballpark of 95% plant-based. But
absolute rubbish, Peter. That is simply not so.
They do eat some animals.
And even if it was, so what? That would be an association and not a cause and effect relationship. Ergo, get fucked. What's next?
Products. Okay. Another thing Bart K says, he says people don't need to eat fiber at all. But if they don't eat fiber, then they're at markedly increased risk of...
No, Peter. Before you even say it, there are no evidences to support the claims you're about to make. None at all. We talked about this, remember? I even showed you that there was one and only one even remotely pseudo-clinical study on people's bowel function as that relates to the intake of fibre, and its findings were absolutely unequivocal, weren't they, Peter? Remember? Smaller sample set, n equals 63, I believe it was. But 100% remission of all symptoms of constipation, straining, anal bleeding, and such in a population of people presenting at the outset with idiopathic constipation. Remove all the fibre from the diet, all symptomology and all problems completely resolved. Isn't that interesting? 100% success, 100% of the time. It's pretty powerful, even with a small sample size, I think you'll find. So whatever you're going to say about risk is not supported with evidence, Peter. There are no studies that inform on risk still.
Abdominal pressure syndrome, as described by Dennis Burkett, and we're going to go over that briefly. Epidemiology, he says, is not helpful for understanding nutrition.
It is not. Correct. Absolutely is not.
But that is wrong.
No, it isn't wrong at all, Peter. You are showing an infantile understanding of the kind of ill-disciplined claptrappery that's put together by nutritional epidemiologists. For a start, most of this is undertaken via respondent data sets where they are asked about what their diet is. No researcher that has done a large-scale study on nutrition has controlled the population and known what they really have eaten. They're quite different from what people report they've eaten, actually, Peter. They are associative. They are completely uncontrolled. They are not science. They do not do anything, Peter, but assist with hypothesis formation. That is their place. Nothing else. Hypothesis generation. All right? This is very straightforward. And the sooner you understand that, the better. Just saying that something I've said is wrong doesn't make it wrong. It isn't wrong, Peter. I've spent decades developing arguments, standing up against far, far more intelligent, more credible, more fearsome opponents than you, Sunshine. Ergo, I have learned to construct arguments that are unassailable. When I say something is a fact, you can take that to the bank, Sunshine. Epidemiology is not helpful in informing us on nutrition. Fact.
He doesn't like epidemiology because
It's not that I don't like it. It has its place, that being in hypothesis generation and nothing else.
all of the epidemiology shows low fat, low sodium, plant-based diets are closer to 100% vegan, getting up in the 90s in the percent of calories from plants. They're the healthiest people in the world.
No, they don't show that at all, Peter. That is a lie. Anytime you want to debate the outcome statistics of any of those studies with me live on camera so that I can tear you 7 new assholes, you just send me an email and we'll make that happen, son. There are no studies that support your claim. None at all.
That's what makes people healthy.
No, it isn't. Makes is a cause and effect statement. False again.
So, of course, he doesn't like that. The Esselstyn diet, is the most successful diet by far ever.
No, it isn't, Peter. There is no evidence to support that claim either.
For prevention of coronary disease. It's
No, preventative is a cause and effect statement. And you've also forgotten that other intervention that Esselstyn had in his study, so-called, which completely confounds his study, utterly confounds his study. Remember? We discussed that in the debate the other day too. Remember? The one about the statins. Add in the social engagement of the thing as well, all as confounders, covariates, collinearities. Forget it, Peter. Not science. A naturalistic observation. No proof of anything there, whatever.
100% vegan, low fat with no oils. Okay, there was a Plant Chompers. There's a guy, pretty famous.
He's an absolute imbecile, Peter. He's a pseudo-intellectual who had some involvement in academia way back, I think at the master's degree level, looking at epidemiology of environmental toxins and tracing those back to find the source of the emitter of those toxins, sort of thing. And that's my understanding of what he did. Based on his knowledge of that area, he is unable to conceive of how vastly ill-disciplined garbage science the nutritional epidemiology is, because it's a different kettle of fish, isn't it? Altogether. Neither is he able to conceive of any possibility that his ridiculous theology is fundamentally flawed from the ground up, in the same way that you are utterly incapable, Peter, of addressing that very real reality, because it is a reality. You are woefully mistaken on every one of your beliefs about human health and human physiology and human nutritional needs. There's no two ways about that. I've shown that already quite adequately, I think. Let's hope you get better here, because you've not convinced anybody of anything.
Nutrition YouTube video channel, and he made a video of Bart K debunking Bart K, and Bart K.
No, he did no such thing, Peter. He did not debunk me in any way, shape, or form. He's just called his video that as a clickbait title. I handed him his ass just as easily as I handed you yours. I showed him up without ever speaking to him face to face, because he has less balls, frankly, even than you do, son, and that's saying something. Okay? He wouldn't even front me. But I showed him up. We're done with that. Let's move on.
That video, he showed Bart K saying that there was no scientific literature to confirm his dietary recommendations were the best ones.
I've never said there was. Ever. There's also no science to underpin anybody's recommendations. There is no science in this area that we can go to. It's all pseudoscience. Yes, that is my position.
Ones, okay? So that's a pretty big statement. He has no scientific belief. He says it just hasn't been done yet. Well, excuse me.
Yeah, but yours hasn't been done either, Peter. You don't have any science either. We've covered that in more than enough detail for anyone with more than 3 brain cells to understand, both in the discussion we had the other day and in this video so far, which is going to be a marathon.
Sort of saying that's what you believe,
Projection there, Peter. Remember? Everything you're saying comes from a belief structure. None of it comes from scientific inference of any kind.
I can.
You're just name dropping and repeating pustulous, excremental, fallacious garbage spewed forth by those imbeciles previously as if it was your own idea, without any ability to actually engage with the science or the statistics that underpin any of it. You're a ludicrous joke. It's time to shut the fuck up, frankly.
Real quick, get 100 papers showing you how great the vegetarian diet is. Especially.
No, you can't, Peter. You can't show me a single paper showing any such thing, because I'm still a disciplined scientist and you're still a buffoon.
See, the vegan diet, it's obvious. Okay, here's just...
Oh, it's obvious. Okay, if you say so, Peter. No.
One point about plants. If you are out in the sun on a hot day, it's 100 degrees outside, it's very easy for you as a human, just walk underneath the tree and get some shade. A plant doesn't have that option. It has to stay there in the hot sun. So the plant protects itself by making antioxidant chemicals. And when we eat the plant, we get those chemicals to protect itself from the...
We don't need them from there. We have our own suite that we generate from proteins assembled according to our genetic instruction set. We have urate in our bloodstreams and in our body fluids. We have electrical grounding to Mother Earth as was designed by nature. We don't need plant-based antioxidants. Not at all.
The heat of the sun, okay?
Okay.
And you want that because you need the antioxidants to present what is called oxidative stress.
No, you don't. To prevent oxidative stress, what you need to do is avoid oxidative stress. That's quite a different thing. And you're assuming that your way of thinking about achieving this outcome is the only way. And therefore, that proves absolutely that your way of doing nutrition is the only way. Well, false, Peter. It's absolute fucking nonsense.
Basically, you can think of it like a seesaw. If there's more oxidants, chemicals that want to steal electrons.
Just reductionist, childlike nonsense, Peter. It doesn't show any grasp of the actual control levers working this relationship whatsoever. It's infantile.
They will have a harmful effect if you don't have any...
And there you go. Effect is the conjugate of cause and effect. Show me the studies where experiments have been done establishing something along these lines at all. Good luck.
Oxidants to counteract them, like to protect your lipids, for example. Okay.
My lipids are fantastic.
But there's a lot more to that. That's like things like vitamin C and all that stuff.
Vitamin C exists in perfectly adequate supply for a human being in the muscle meat of large ruminant animals. In fact.
Glutathione and all that. Okay, one last point on eating the plants, you get the nitrates. So,
yeah, which you also get from meat.
You especially get those, for example, from eating greens. When you eat the greens, here's a leaf of the greens. They go onto your mouth, and they contain nitrate, NO3. They go on your tongue. There's bacteria in the back of your tongue. That converts it to nitrite. This should be an I here, NO2. And then when that goes into your stomach, the stomach acid facilitates more of the conversion to nitric oxide, NO. That's absorbed in your blood, has a systemic vasodilatory effect. Okay, and you don't want to eat things that tend to kill the bacteria in the back of your tongue, like F- toothpaste and mouthwash and stuff, because then you'll be less effective at making that conversion. The older you get, the more you need that because you don't produce as much from your arterial lining cells, your endothelial cells. Okay, here's abdominal pressure syndrome as described by Dennis Burkitt. He was the Irish Christian missionary doctor who ended up going to...
Okay, so before you get into this, we'll let you do it because it's your video and that's what you're doing. Show me a study that shows that people who eat only meat are represented more than they should be in a population of people with this so-called syndrome that you're about to outline. Is this an actual problem? Or is this just yet more time-wasting waffle? Because we know the answer to that already, don't we?
Africa, and he actually ended up becoming in charge of the epidemiology in Africa. And what he noticed was the persons who had come from, for example, England, that were eating, old-fashioned low-fiber diets, bread and jam and tea and meat, they had a lack of fiber and they were constipated. This led to rectal hemorrhoids from the back pressure, straining and defecation. That's called the Valsalva maneuver. The back pressure caused outpouchings of their sigmoid colon. That's called diverticulosis.
So all of these are constructs and theories. Okay. I don't have constipation at all. On 100% or nearly 100% carnivore diet. Not remotely do I have constipation. Ever. So what's your problem? Almost every carnivore that's been doing carnivore for any significant period of time will report similarly that they do not have constipation or any problem with their bowel function whatsoever or any kind of abdominal syndrome of any kind. So what point are you trying to make here?
Pops, it's diverticulitis. Every day in every Western hospital in the world, there's probably at least one patient admitted for diverticulitis. It's so common. I've seen
and how many of those are 100% carnivores?
Thousands of those cases. Okay.
Yeah, all eating a standard diet, which is the worst diet you can possibly eat.
Also, because what fiber does is it adds water to the stool. So without fiber, your stool is dried out.
No, it's not, though, Peter. I don't consume fiber, and I don't have dried out stool. So that's the end of that argument, isn't it? Other carnivores will report similarly. It must be a thing. You must be wrong. You are wrong. Again.
So when you defecate, you're popping out a Tootsie Roll rather than a plant eater. When they defecate, they pop out typically something very much like a cow patty. And that back pressure.
Well, that's just vile, and that's not appropriate function for the human system at all. That's just horrific, Peter.
Straining it.
You don't need bulk in your stool at all.
The stool for defecation also causes the top of the stomach to pouch into the chest. That's called a hiatal hernia. And
yeah, but I don't have one of those either. I used to have one when I used to eat a plant-based diet. It's gone away now. How does that fit into your little theological scheme, Peter?
Predisposes to gastric acid coming up into the chest, causing gastroesophageal reflux disease.
Yeah, except I had that too when I used to eat plants, and now I don't anymore. Care to explain that?
Okay, that's the feeling of heartburn, discomfort, and that'll change the lining.
You really are an absolutely ridiculous fucking buffoon, aren't you, Peter? I'm really running out of patience for this. We're not going to get through it, I'm quite sure. I was expecting some kind of reasonable rebuttal to anything I had said so far. It's just yet more mindless repetition of the same absolute fuck splattery, isn't it? The same garbage we've heard a billion times and have debunked as many times easily. Nothing new here or of any value, is there?
Of the hiatal hernia to become like what is called Barrett's esophagus, metaplasia of the lining, and that predisposes to increased risk of esophageal cancer.
This is why I didn't let you speak as much as you wanted to, Peter, because it's just fucking waffle. Mindless, boring fucking waffle. And just completely underpinned by nothing more than falsehood.
It's like an adenocarcinoma of the esophagus, rather than the old days you used to get smoker-drinker squamous cell carcinoma of that area. HH is hiatal hernia. Okay, of course, they're at increased risk for gallstones. What also
No, there are no studies that inform on risk. None at all, still.
happens because the stool is dried out on the right side of the
But it's not, though. Remember? Still not true.
colon. They're predisposed to forming little balls of stool.
Yeah, no, it doesn't happen.
Called a fecalith. Lith means
No, doesn't happen.
stone, fecalith, feces stone, or sometimes they're called appendicolith inside the appendix. They block the connection between the cecum, the colon, and the appendix. But the appendix has mucus glands that continue to secrete, but now the mucus can't get into the rest of the colon. It's blocked.
Yeah, it was a real bastard last week with my appendix burst. Oh, that's right, it didn't. Still there. Functioning perfectly well. 10 years into a fully carnivorous diet. Okay?
Blocked by the fecalith, and so it'll sometimes cause the appendix to pop. Much higher incidence of appendicitis in meat eaters, okay?
No. In people on a standard diet. Peter. False comparison. Lie. And even so, it's not a meaningful difference. Still.
The back pressure straining causing pressure down into the leg also causes varicose veins.
Yes, look at all my varicose veins, which I don't have.
All right, in men, the constipation and defecation straining
You still don't have constipation.
can lead to a varicocele, which heats up the testes and can cause infertility. So yes.
Yeah, and I haven't had my fertility tested for a while, to be honest. But I'm sure it's as it was.
You can become infertile due to constipation.
Yeah, possibly you can, but I'm not constipated, so this is not something that I should be concerned about. And neither is anybody else that I'm in contact with who's in the carnivore community. And there are thousands of us, hundreds of thousands, millions of us in the wider community at large. In my sphere of significantly numbers of thousands, ain't nobody saying they're constipated because of the carnivore diet. Still.
Okay, then the other thing too, I mentioned when I had my conversation with Bart, the importance of this book here, the China study.
It doesn't have any importance. It's an absolute work of fiction. It's complete garbage. It's not peer-reviewed science. It's not well-conducted or controlled science. It's nothing but theology.
Bart mocked the book. He always mocks the great pioneers of nutrition because
T. Colin Campbell is not a great pioneer in nutrition. He's an ill-educated, misinformed buffoon, a pseudoscientist who posed at one point as a scientist to publish a naturalistic observation which has no power to inform us whatever. It's just misleading nonsense. It's criminal misanthropy and nothing else. This is just vegan ideology and propagandizement. It's all it is. I'm quite right to mock it, and I will continue to mock it as long as I live.
Because, again, all the real nutrition research promotes plant-based diets.
No, it doesn't, in fact. Number one, because there is no real nutrition research. And number two, even if you want to call what exists nutrition research, there is plenty to look at to question your theology there, Peter, as far as plant-based diets go. Plenty.
Okay, and what T. Colin Campbell discovered in his research, this book was co-authored with his son, but what he discovered in his research was the more animal protein that the animals ate in his studies, all like the rodent studies, for example.
Right, so rodents. Yeah? Tell us all about rodents. And next time I'm talking to a rodent, I'll advise that rodent according to the rodent data. Okay, we done?
The higher their rates of cancer and cancer growth. And also he saw in humans.
Okay, so what's the natural diet of a rat? Is it the same as a human's natural diet? No, it isn't.
The more the populations were eating animal protein.
No, the more they reported that. Respondent data from participants, authors relying on those people telling the truth about what they eat. Bad idea. People tell lies, Peter. Completely invalid. Not science. Sorry.
The higher their cancer rate.
And no, not meaningfully at all. We've discussed that. Absolute falsehood there, Peter. Again, tell me the outcome statistics in absolute terms and let's discuss those. Again, I know you are incapable of so doing. You do not have the skills to look at these statistics. You have no place making public comment about this study or any other. My comments remain correct regarding the ridiculousness of this stupid book.
Actually felt that the casein, the protein in milk, was the most powerful cancer promoter.
No, false. That's again is a cause and effect statement which cannot be supported with any empirical cause and effect data. It's an idea. No, Peter.
And by the way,
nice grabs.
You look at the rates of cancer death in USA, they really haven't changed that much since the 1970s. There has not been much progress in the treatment of cancer. That's an
correct
important point.
To what end is that an important point?
Some people think, oh, the modern world's got all this modern technology and it's really making a difference. Yeah, right. Okay, and so here's showing cancer foci. And basically, the more animal protein a person ate, the more cancer they had and the more likely it was to progress.
Tell you what, ice creams and sunburn, swimming pool accidents resulting in drownings, and movies by Nicolas Cage. The length of a student's foot between the ages of 5 and 10 and their mathematical ability attendant to those same years. Are we done? Yes? Okay.
All right, and then here was one of the things that T. Colin Campbell talked about is that you could kind of use animal protein. You could also say surrogate fat. Saturated fat was a bit of a marker for animal protein.
So a second messenger piss-poor association at best. Not even looking at the actual outcome that you're interested in. This isn't science, is it, Peter? This is not what scientists do. This is what desperate buffoons do when they're trying to find something that they might be able to get published. This is really ugly work, by the way. Really ugly repetition of or reproduction of charts. Why don't you just copy and paste the chart in? It's fair use.
Insulin-like growth factor was kind of similar, and because the sat fat causes insulin resistance and is associated with eating
it does no such thing, Peter, at all. That's your false ideology, that's your false construct, that's your model of what you think it is, and it's just ridiculous. It's nonsense. Still.
Animal food, higher insulin levels are also associated with it. So what's the most important one? T. Colin Campbell felt the most important indicator was animal protein.
Who cares what T. Colin Campbell felt? T. Colin Campbell didn't do any science or get any of it peer-reviewed. In fact, as part of his China study. I wonder why it was that it wasn't published or peer-reviewed by anybody.
And so...
Not that that necessarily renders something valid or of veracity if it is peer-reviewed, but the fact that it's not is an absolute red flag, is what I'm saying. Okay, it's a double standard, and I don't give a fuck.
The fact that the amount of cancer going up and being worse correlates with sat fat, insulin-like growth factor.
So what? Who cares what correlates with what? We're interested in cause and effect. If we want to prevent outcomes, we need to go to mechanisms that can prevent those things. Associations can't give us that. Still.
Factor level, high insulin levels, was in some sense in part a surrogate measure being related to animal protein, was the feeling of T. Colin Campbell.
Who cares? He was an idiot.
Okay, and another person, it's not just T. Colin Campbell, it's not just all the epidemiology data. Dean Ornish did a big landmark study where he took patients with low-grade prostate cancer, and this was a randomized control, and that's one of...
So you mean pseudo-randomized, pseudo-controlled. Were they locked in labs for any period of time and kept under control and observation to make sure that they complied absolutely with whatever this design was? Were they?
Things too, Bart had said. Show me some randomized control trials. Well, they don't do that many randomized control trials.
I wonder why.
Nutrition, but here's an example of one.
No, it isn't. Actually, have you read it?
Where they took a bunch of biopsy-proven prostate cancer patients that had declined treatment and wanted watchful waiting, so to speak. And one group of them he put on a, primarily vegetarian diet, and they kept
what does that mean?
Their PSA.
What is a primarily vegetarian diet?
Stable or lowered them and did not go on to any additional treatment.
Okay, so what?
Versus the patients who went on with, standard, the control group, if you will.
They had a standard diet, did they? The diet that we absolutely know to be the worst possible diet that a human being can consume? In which case, what have you got here? A comparison with what we already know to be the worst diet possible with one that is still horrifically poor, the vegan diet, or close to vegan, horrifically poor, but not as bad as the standard diet, at least in the short term. So what have you proved there with that? Nothing whatsoever, and neither did Dean Ornish. It's nonsense. It's ideology, Peter. It's a publication of basically an aggrandized opinion piece because it does not follow the scientific disciplines. Okay? How long were these people followed up for? Can't even find it there at the moment. It's probably also a short-term study. Ergo, unable to inform us on anything long-term or meaningful. And the outcome statistic differences probably was swamped by signal-to-noise ratio issues, I would imagine, as well. I'm sure we could tease all of those things out if I could be bothered to look at this paper. But I can't because I know already that it's not a study that can inform me on cause and effect. Okay?
Many of them went on to needing some type of more invasive therapy, be that either surgery or radiation. So the point was it suggested a protective effect from vegetarian diet. Okay, here's another article talking about saturated fat, meaning animal fat.
No, meaning saturated fat. Not meaning animal fat at all.
Being more metabolically harmful to the human liver than unsaturated fat.
Under what circumstances and conditions? As assessed how, by whom, using what methodology?
Or simple sugars, which is kind of interesting because simple sugars implies, some fructose in there. But of course, that's a whole other topic. We're not going to get into that today. The differences between fruit.
Okay, so you want to splash up a headline, a Vox Pop headline style title to an apparently scientific article, and we just expected to just take that on. And you've not actually addressed the paper at all or told us anything that's in it. Neither have you addressed whether this paper is capable of informing on the thing it's proposing in its title that it's informing upon, because I'll bet you it's not. Okay?
High fructose corn syrup, that's a topic for another day. But the point of it was that the saturated fat induced the greatest amount of intrahepatic triglycerides, the greatest amount of fatty liver.
So, in what term are we talking about? Under what conditions? How much of what was being fed? What was the rest of the diet? What were the controls being exerted here? There's no point putting a paper up on the screen to make it look like you're so well researched if you don't even know what these people have done or read the paper. Peter, that's one of the other areas you fell down so badly in our discussion the other day because you were not prepared. You had no idea what these papers said, other than the words. When the inference is actually in the statistics, not in the words. Scientists know that.
So it had major negative effects. So these are all...
Major negative effect? No. See, effect is still the conjugative cause, and this paper cannot inform on that. No.
Bad things, because being pushed towards hypertension, towards fatty liver, which is really like diabetes of the liver, that all pushes towards diabetes. And
okay, I don't have either of those conditions at all, remotely. And carnivores will universally report the same to you. Okay, are we done?
Secondary complications, of course. Coronary artery disease, heart attack. And
yeah, most of the carnivores of any tenure will also report a 0 or near 0 CAC score as well. And, 0 or near 0 indicators of chronic systemic inflammation and the best health that they have expressed for their entire lifespan hitherto. It's almost like it's a thing.
Dementia, okay.
Good.
Okay, now here's one thing too. These ketogenic diets, people a lot of times have elevated blood ketone.
A 100% carnivore diet is not akin to anything being done by the people calling themselves the ketogenic diet. Carnivores have no desire to be in ketosis at all costs, to have a huge amount of ketones floating around, or to worry about what meal might or might not kick us out. Okay? It's got nothing to do with carnivores at all, the ketogenic thing.
Ketones, and from eating the high-fat diets, and that is associated with fatigue, the lack...
In the initial stages before a person is fully adapted to a diet which is rich in fat and poor in carbohydrates, sure. But the adjustment doesn't take long.
Fibers associated with constipation.
No, it isn't at all, in fact. That's nonsense.
Sounds like a great diet to me. Make yourself constipated and tired.
Yeah, but we're not constipated, Peter, still. So it's still just your ridiculous theology.
Tired, okay? And then they'll say, well, it decreases the risk of seizure.
There are no studies that inform us on risk whatsoever.
In some refractory seizure patients, yeah, great. You're slowing down your brain as well, which is good if you're...
Well, Peter, I think we can see whose brain it is that really struggles to keep up. I think it's really clear and patent for anyone who saw the initial discussion between you and I, your ludicrous behavior online thereafter, and then your ridiculous video, this one, I think we can all see who it is that's really battling sun and really has some very big mountains to climb. You are so vastly destitute of competence to read science that you are completely unable to make an assessment of what is good science and what is rubbish. And what you're presenting here is a pile of rubbish. Okay?
You're hyper excited and having seizure disorder, but
Yeah, I'm not though, still.
I like my brain to be sharp and fast. I don't
Well, then stop this ridiculous nonsense, Peter, and come and join us in the human race over here, in the objective reality in which we all find ourselves.
want to slow
Stop repeating the same ridiculous lies that you've already been pulled out on the other day on our discussion and completely destroyed on. Stop saying that shit. You've been wrecked on it.
brain, for that reason, okay? There's a difference between intrinsically fast and slow for disease. The other thing, too, is it's relevant to talk about a little bit about the history of nutrition, and I'm just going to briefly mention Cicero.
Jesus Christ, seriously.
Okay, so Cicero is the greatest of all Romans, and one
That's an opinion.
of Cicero's quotes was, "To not know what happened before you were born is to forever remain a child." So we should know a little bit about the history of nutrition and epidemiology, okay?
Bye. To what end, Peter? Will that change the fact that epidemiology is incapable of informing on cause and effect? Ergo, your cause and effect claims still fail? Will it change that fact at all? I don't think so.
And it's pretty easy to go over some of the key points. So here is the Mexican-American border between Arizona and Mexico. And these two populations, the Tarahumara people and the Pima people, they used to be kind of combined populations. And the Tarahumara still live in northern Mexico in the Sierra Madre Mountains, Copper Canyon area. And they eat their old-fashioned diet, lots of corn and beans and local greens. They're world famous. Their name almost means fleet runner. And they're famous for running ultramarathons.
Okay. I did say I was running out of patience. We've got about a third or perhaps even a quarter of the way through this excremental torrent of disinformation, incompetent assessment of pseudoscientific propaganda pieces, and a mindless turd, name of Peter Rogers, who cannot even conceive of how badly he was shown up the other day and still thinks it's appropriate for him to continue to espouse the same fucking ridiculous nonsense again. It's incredible. Absolutely fucking incredible, isn't it, kids? Right, there it is. Those were our people today. Join me next time when someone else will be wrong on the interwebs. And I hope it'll be less long-winded than this fucktard here. See you then.